When we talk about dividend income as a form of passive income, I do want to clarify what a lot of people do. I know you and I both do this in our own portfolios because we're not taking income from them yet. Mm-hmm. When a stock or a mutual fund or whatever the case might be declares a dividend, we're not taking that as income. The way a lot of people would do it is that income would simply be reinvested in more of the same stock. That is typically the way you see it done. That's why you see fractions of a share of stock in portfolios, and that's what it was. They're repurchasing the same thing.
And so whenever you go to turn on that lifetime guaranteed income, they're going to base that lifetime guaranteed income on the value of the benefit base, not on the value of the actual account itself. Okay? And because you've been getting a guaranteed roll-up, a guaranteed rate of return on the benefit base, once again, I'm using air quotes here for those listening on podcast because it doesn't exist anywhere except on your statement. Mm-hmm. Okay, it exists on paper. That's the only time that's the only place this benefit base exists. But this phantom benefit base has continued to go up over, let's say, 10 years at a 7-8% clip every single year, regardless of market conditions. Thank you for joining us once again. This is Eric Douglas, Chris Vaughn. This is the Retirement Planning Happy Hour. We appreciate you being here with us for another edition of all kinds of conversations around finances and investments and retirement planning more specifically, while we enjoy a taste of some good premium Kentucky bourbon here. So today's episode, we are continuing the conversation that we started in the last episode about passive income, because we started going down that rabbit hole and we didn't realize how deep that rabbit hole was when we started talking about it. And so we definitely have some other different types of passive income that we needed to talk about today, just to kind of put a bow on that conversation, because I did find it to be really interesting because, once again, that topic came up as a result of conversations that we've been having. And one of the conversations, or one of the questions I get a lot from clients and from prospects as they come in the door, just people out and about, is they find out what we do for a living, right? What's the best kind of how can I make income? How much income can I get from these investments? And income, and they're not really focused on total returns, because so many people have been trained to learn about income, right? Especially as it relates to retirement and generating income in retirement, and while that is certainly important, and certainly one of the things that we want to do, so many people, I think, get lost in the word income, and become a little bit less focused on the goal, which is total return, right? And figuring out how best to generate that income, when you look kind of top down at your overall portfolio, right? So with that being said, we're going to continue that conversation about passive income, go back to the myths around passive income, but let's introduce the bourbon that we have here today.
So we're going to start out with a minor correction. This is not bourbon.
There we go.
This is a rye. I don't think, because as a general rule, you're not a fan of ryes.
It's not that I generally do not prefer them. If I'm going to be at the store buying one, I'm usually not going to buy a rye.
Right, fair enough. So, but the correction here is this is not technically a bourbon. It's a rye. Yep. Now, most bourbon people also like ryes. They kind of go hand in hand. This one is Sazerac rye, and it's I believe it's called, it's a full proof as opposed to a barrel proof. Slight differences there. So if you know anything about this, Sazerac is the company that owns Buffalo Trace. So all those famous things that they make, Sazerac's the company that owns them. The regular Sazerac rye, I will tell you, when I go to bourbon events, it is among the least popular ryes that are out there that people have seen. Everybody loves the rest of the lineup that Buffalo Trace has, but they just don't care for the Sazerac rye. I agree. I'm not a fan.
I'm in the same boat, by the way.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. That's common, but this one's different. This is a new release. They just started doing this. I took this very bottle to a club that we meet once a month. I took it in last week. Everybody went, well, I don't care for Sazerac rye, but I'll give it a shot. Every single person went nuts and said, this is really good. Surprisingly so, including a couple of people who are not fans of rye. So I thought that would be a fun one to bring in today. It is 125 proof, so you've been warned up front that if you really like it, you got to be careful with it because it'll sneak up on you fast. It is not readily available yet. If you stumble into some out there, you might want to snatch it up. I believe the retail on this is $60, and that's probably about where it's going to stay. Right now, I mean, you can find it at the distillery from time to time. They'll put some bottles out one day, but it's just luck of the draw. I would say a year, 2 years from now, you're going to be able to find this in pretty much any decent-sized liquor store, certainly in this area. So anyway, that's what we're drinking today. Let's just see if we can get you onto a rye that you really like, right?
I will say just my very, very first impressions is I don't think it's going to be sneaking up on anybody.
Okay, fair enough.
So that's not either good or bad. I'm just saying I don't think there's going to be any sneaking up. So with that being said, let's go back and kind of review some of the things that we talked about last week, just to kind of reset the conversation.
Right.
And the idea was talking about passive income. And so many people love this idea of passive income, and I'm going to generate all this money from all my investments, and I'm not going to have to do any work. And, and everyone loves a good side hustle. You see it on TikTok and Twitter and all these other places. Real estate. We talked about real estate to death last week. We're not going to revisit that. But everyone loves this idea of passive income, meaning
I was going to say, I think they like what they think it means, not necessarily.
And they like the idea, right? They like the idea of income that you don't really have to work for.
I don't have to do anything. It's passive. Right.
It doesn't require daily work, very little effort, if you will, on my part, right? And we talked about really the more passive your income is, the more passive the results will be.
Correct.
Right? The less effort that you put into it, the less fruitful the income will be. And that was kind of how we set up that conversation. And some of the myths that we talked about that we were kind of dispelling, if you will, passive income is free money, very much not the case. No. Passive income requires upfront capital.
You got to put something into it, some time, some blood, sweat, and tears, some money, something. It's not free.
Yep, absolutely. Real estate's always better than the stock market. We kind of dispelled that last week as well. Not to say that real estate's bad or it's just different.
It's just different,
they're
right?
Different. They're different investments. High yield equals better income. 100% not the case. Because in order to get higher yield, you're having to take higher risk.
That's right.
Which means it becomes sometimes a little bit less passive. So just because it's a higher yield doesn't mean it's better income. You're typically taking more risk to get that income. And another one that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about here today is annuities. And the myth being that annuities are bad. And I'm not going to say they're bad. I'm not going to say they're good. They are.
They're a thing, yeah.
They're a thing. They're a tool in the toolbox. So we kind of wrapped up last week talking about bond ladders. So where do we want to start today?
Well, interestingly enough, I'll just make a comment on bond ladders. I actually spent about an hour and a half this morning structuring out a bond ladder for somebody because interest rates are starting to drop, and I wanted to get the next year and a half worth of their income set up so we don't have to worry. We know exactly what kind of rates we're going to get.
Lock in interest rates, yep.
So I think we should probably move on to dividend stocks.
Okay.
Now, we need to start with, what is a dividend stock? So I think people know that dividend is a form of income, but they don't really know where it comes from in many cases. A dividend stock just simply means that company is declaring a dividend, which means they made a profit. They now owe taxes on that profit. So instead of paying the tax bill, they're giving some of their profits to you, the stockholder, and now you
get to
have to pay the taxes. Now, that's not a bad thing.
No,
you don't mind paying those taxes because you did nothing to earn that income, right? It truly was passive, other than that you went out and purchased it in the first place. So a dividend is simply, it is the sharing of the profits of a company, and then you have to pay taxes on that dividend income.
And you're sharing in the profits because as a stockholder, you are an owner of that company. And that gets lost so often when we talk about these investments, like they're just some thing that happens up in the air. And tangibly speaking, if you own a stock, you are a shareholder. You are an owner of that company to a very, very small degree in most cases, right? But but you still are an owner of the company, and so as profits come in, you get to participate in those profits. And ultimately, that's what dividends are. You're getting paid out in dividend. You're getting paid some income, but it is taxed as ordinary income.
Correct.
So when you are receiving a dividend, you are sacrificing total return on the stock price that could potentially at a later point be taxed as a long-term capital gain.
Right.
So sometimes dividends, while in the moment may feel good as income, sometimes it's going to be a less tax efficient way, right, to realize your profits, to receive the income from your portfolio.
Yeah. Now, I do want to go into, when we talk about dividend income as a form of passive income, I do want to clarify what a lot of people do. I know you and I both do this in our own portfolios because we're not taking income from them yet. When a stock or a mutual fund or whatever the case might be declares a dividend, we're not taking that as income. The way a lot of people would do it is that income would simply be reinvested in more of the same stock. That is typically the way you see it done. That's why you see fractions of a share of stock in portfolios, and that's what it was. They're repurchasing the same thing. That's not what we're talking about.
Using the dividends to buy more shares.
Right. We're talking about actually taking it as a form of income. So
it is also worth noting, by the way, when you do reinvest your dividends, you still have to pay taxes on the dividends. You still
owe the tax man on that. That's right.
So that's
okay, so what I think the biggest pro on a dividend stock is also its biggest con. And here's what I mean by that. The biggest pro to me is this is about as close to really passive income in the meaning of the word passive as I can think of, because you simply buy this stock. That doesn't require a lot of effort. It does require the sacrifice of cash. But then after that, you don't need to do anything to generate that income. You just got to pay the tax man on your dividend, though. And what a lot of people do, they'll find companies that consistently pay dividends, and they have year in and year out for decades in some cases. So they get very reliant on this. And I've met with many people, I'm sure you have too, that they have a portfolio, and it's usually an older couple that do it.
It's an old school way of managing money.
Very much, yeah. They're just used to this dividend coming in. The pro is, you don't have to do a whole lot on this one, right? But therein lies the biggest con. There is absolutely no requirement that those companies declare a dividend, right? Just because they have done it, year in and year out for the last 30, 40 years doesn't mean that they're going to continue doing it. All it takes is for their profits to start shrinking, and that dividend doesn't get declared. Now, most people who use this strategy, they use fairly large companies, large cap dividend-paying stocks. Right.
Companies
household
exactly. Names.
You see some smaller ones, but for the most part, it's the big companies. One that pops into my mind, once upon a time, there was this company out there that they were in the film business. It's called Eastman Kodak.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That was a great dividend payer for a long, long time. Up until about 2 weeks ago, I thought that they were gone. They actually do still exist. But I can assure you they are not running major profits. They are dealing with huge amounts of debt. I saw a news article on them, how they're trying to kind of change their business model. But the point here is a company that was relied upon for decades to pay out those dividends, the market's changed, innovation changed, the company didn't change and innovate with it fast enough, and basically the company went away. So the biggest pro is you don't have to do very much, but that's also, if you rely on it, you are subject to the whims of change, right?
Yep. And one thing to remember too, when it comes to dividends, because you always have to analyze an investment based upon, okay, what other options do I have available to me? So if you are investing in a company that's paying out dividends, typically what are you usually sacrificing?
You're sacrificing growth.
Usually because in order to pay a dividend, the reason they're paying dividends is because there's profit.
Right.
But that company has a decision to make whenever that it makes a profit. They can take that profit, it can pay out shareholders, it can pay the owners of the company, or it can take that profit and then in turn reinvest
it, right,
into the company, research, development, new technology, new innovation. You just talked about innovation, right? Whatever they're going to reinvest in, they're reinvesting in the company, so they're not actually realizing a quote unquote profit, right? or at least they're not paying that profit out to their shareholders, I should say. So you typically are sacrificing growth. So when you look at a chart of the different types of companies that are out there, when you look at high dividend paying stocks, they typically are not going to be the highest performing stocks from a return perspective when you're looking at all the charts. And when you look at the sectors of the economy, or sorry, the different asset classes within the stock market, I should say, there's growth and there's value. And typically your dividend paying stocks are going to be on the value side. And if you look at any chart over the last decade, growth is dramatically outpacing value. Right. Okay? Because what those growth companies are doing is they are not paying as much of a dividend, right? They're not paying as much income to its shareholders, but it's reinvesting in the company in order to facilitate more future growth. Yep. Okay? And when you're getting more future growth within the company, what's happening to the stock price?
Stock price goes up. That's right.
Stock price goes up. It's also worth noting that a dividend-paying company is not immune to stock market volatility.
There it is.
Okay. So there are still risks, and I've had this conversation before. It doesn't mean just because you are receiving a dividend from a company doesn't mean that you're not exposed to loss. Yeah. Right. You're 100% still exposed to stock market volatility, as the example that you just used with Kodak, illustrates. Right. You're still going to be subject to that market risk. Yep. And it's also worth noting when the value of a stock goes down. Sometimes you talk about, this stock is paying such a high dividend at whatever percentage rate. Right. Well, if the stock goes down, the percentage dividend that they're paying goes up because the value of the stock is down. So inherently, if you're getting a very big dividend, it's probably because the value of the stock itself has gone down or is not doing as well as it possibly could be.
Which puts you at risk for more of a permanent type of loss.
More volatility and less growth and all that. And you're also sacrificing, once again, going back to the point I just made earlier, when you're sacrificing growth in order to receive income today, it becomes less tax efficient because you are receiving dividends in the form of income, but it's going to be taxed as ordinary income, which in the vast majority of cases is going to be taxed at a much higher tax rate than what the long-term capital gains would have been taxed at if you were to hold on to a growth stock and then sell some of the gains.
So I'll kind of wrap up this subject by saying this. You said that this was kind of an old school style of investing, and I would agree. That's what we've seen. The issue that I see with people who have these income portfolios is they are all in on a handful of dividend-paying companies, as opposed to it being part of an overall portfolio. And I have never seen a client that is already retired that's receiving, X amount of dollars every month or year to live on that wants to take a pay cut because their dividend-paying stock took a hit or didn't pay its dividend out. And this is fine as part of a portfolio, but not when it's all of the portfolio. There's just too much risk in that.
Yeah, and when we build our models and we construct portfolios, right, we have dividend funds.
Sure, absolutely.
We have funds that are invested in dividend-paying companies and rising dividend earners, right? And that's something that we do take a look at, and that is a piece of our portfolio.
It's a piece, though. That's the main point.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a piece of our portfolio, but we're not allocating an entire portfolio to dividend-paying stocks. And it's an old philosophy. It's, there's so many different Johnson & Johnson's one. I know Altria. Coca-Cola.
Caterpillar.
Some of those very much household names that are known for paying dividends over a long period of time, but they're also not going to be the highest growth stocks available to you on the market today. So it's just always that trade-off. If you're going to accept a dividend, you're probably sacrificing some type of growth on the back end. So as long as you know that, as long as you're comfortable with it, we just need to be aware of, the pros and the cons of all of these different types of passive investment streams or passive income streams.
All right, let's move on and talk about income annuities.
Okay.
Now, remember, we got to be specific here, and we've said this many times before. Annuities, the word, has a bad reputation for a good reason, right? But what's important about the word annuity, and we've said this before, and I've seen comments about, the word before it is important, right? Because it really defines it.
It's most important.
Yeah, it's the most important thing. So there are different types of income annuity. So let's start with what we usually call an immediate annuity, or a SPIA is the typical structure.
Single premium immediate annuity.
Single premium immediate annuity. Basically what you're doing here is you're buying a pension.
Correct.
You're taking a lump sum of money from whatever the source might be. It could be a 401k or an IRA that you'd saved up over the years. It can be money from an inheritance. It can be, money out of a brokerage account. You pretty much pull the money from anywhere you want. But the whole point here is that you give this lump sum to an insurance company, and immediately, I believe the rule is within 1 year, but pretty much in the immediate future, they start sending you a paycheck, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you've given that money to them. You can't get it back. That's important that people understand that part. They're now going to pay you every month or however you set it up until a certain event happens. And that is almost always death is what that event is. So that's what a SPIA, an immediate annuity is. That's what we're talking about when it comes to income. The big pro there is you can't outlive that income.
You right? Are buying a product, and the product is guaranteed lifetime income.
You're buying a paycheck for the rest of your life. That's what you're doing, and that's a pretty big pro, right? Especially if you're a little skittish about investments and things like that. It's very attractive to a lot of people to know that paycheck is going to show up month in and month out, no matter what.
Stability, peace of mind, all that, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you want to go into some of the pros or the cons?
Well, the big con is just like I was talking about on dividend-paying stocks, right? Mm-hmm. Income sounds great until you realize what you're sacrificing to get that income. So anytime you have an annuity that's paying out income in any way, shape, or form, you are sacrificing growth and potentially a lot of growth opportunity in order to provide you, in this case, a guaranteed lifetime income stream, right? That comes at a cost. Now, no one knows what the market's going to do over the next 10, 15, 20 years. No one has a crystal ball. But historically speaking, if we're looking at historical trends, right, there's been no 11-year period over the history of the stock market that's ever been negative, right? And so if we have a long-term view of the markets, which is what we always try to maintain when we're building out long-term retirement plans, because the average retirement's almost 20 years long, that's still a long-term
It is.
That's still a long-term investment horizon, right? And most people don't think about it that way. But we have to understand that anything that we are doing to generate income is going to sacrifice growth. And in this case, with annuities, you're probably sacrificing a lot of growth.
Yes. Yeah.
Because what that insurance company is doing is they are taking on all of the risk themselves. They're removing risk from whatever amount of assets that you give them. So if you go into an annuity company or an insurance company and say, I've got $300,000, I'm walking into the store with $300,000. I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
And I'm going to buy whatever income stream that you can pay me for the rest of my life with $300,000. Let's say it's, I don't know, $3,000 a month. That probably wouldn't even be that high, honestly. But let's say it's $200,000, or I'm sorry, $2,000 a month.
Okay.
They're going to determine that based upon their risk, right, that they're taking. They're going to determine that based upon your life expectancy, how old you are currently, your health. Those insurance companies are really, really good at that.
They're really good at predicting.
They're really good. They're really good at creating actuarial tables. They pay people a lot of money to not be wrong about those things, to know how long you're going to live. Okay, and it also is based upon what they're going to do with that money. So if I'm going to walk in with $300,000 and I'm going to buy a guaranteed lifetime income stream, well, I'm just giving that money to the insurance company. The insurance company isn't just going to tuck that under the mattress.
No.
Right?
No.
They're going to do something with that. And they're going to invest it in their coffers, and they're going to generate some type of return for themselves. Right? And they're
sure.
And it's probably safe to guess that they're going to take significantly more risk than what you are taking with the money.
Yep.
But they can afford to take that risk because obviously they have billions and billions of dollars of pooled assets versus what you have, which is obviously going to be minute compared to whatever the insurance companies have in their general coffers. But that's what you're sacrificing. You're sacrificing safety for growth, right? Or you're sacrificing growth for safety.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let me add to that. The reason that the growth is important, because somebody listening could be saying, growth is not going to be important to me because I now have that guaranteed source of income that I can't outlive. But growth should be important to you. And the reason why is the vast majority of these types of annuities, and this is true across the board with income annuities, they don't go up with inflation. So that hypothetical example you gave a minute ago where they're getting $2,000 a month, well, when you're 65, that $2,000 a month might be a good deal.
Sounds great.
But when you're 90, that $2,000 a month has roughly half the buying power that it did when you first started taking it, but it's still just $2,000 a month. It needs to be $4,000 to have its buying power if you look at the historical models. So therein lies the biggest part of the problem. That's why the growth is important, right? Now, you can buy, there's a lot of annuity companies that will offer this type of product, and they will increase it with inflation, and it could be indexed to the CPI or something along those lines, but they're going to start you at a lower dollar amount in the first place, right? Or they're going to require a larger investment by you up front. The whole point here is you're giving something to get that guarantee. Something is being given away, right? And
and what's being given away
can be a good thing, but you need to understand the sacrifice that you're making.
And that sacrifice is your capital, your assets.
Exactly.
That are never going to come back to you. And that's another con. This is an irreversible decision.
Correct. Yeah. In most cases, if you were to take something like this out, most people don't do what's called a period certain option. Because if you take a period certain option, then you're going to get a lesser amount in the first place. So if you take this and 2 years into it, you're in a car accident and you die much earlier than expected, that income is shut off, right? So if you don't have a period certain or you don't have a joint life annuity option or something along those lines, it can go away very, very quickly.
And sometimes the insurance company is going to charge you to add a beneficiary.
Absolutely. Yep.
So which is going to cost you more in insurance fees, which is going to reduce the amount of income that you receive, and it's just all interconnected, right? So those are definitely some pros and cons of income annuities, right?
But let's move on. Let's talk about another type of income annuity where you're dealing with what was a deferred income annuity, and now it's got an income rider on it. Because I see that type more than I see the SPIA. You just don't see SPIAs that much anymore.
Why don't you?
Because they don't pay out that
there
well
you
for
go.
the amount of money
there
you put
go.
into them, right?
They don't pay nearly the same commissions to the insurance agents that sell SPIAs, so that's why you don't see them very often.
Oh, and by the way, people don't like the fact, okay, let's take your example, $300,000 that I've worked hard for all these years. I go out and I buy the SPIA, I get my $2,000 a month income, I pass away 5 years in. Who gets my $300,000? Nobody. You gave it to the insurance company. There's no death benefit on that type
You went
of thing.
to a store and bought a product.
And you used the product.
That's the analogy I always have to say. If you go into a store and buy a shirt, it's not
you can't return it 5 years from now because you don't like it anymore.
Right. That they gave you the shirt, and you don't get your money back if you only wear the shirt once. Okay. The transaction is done.
And people will say, well, that's not fair. Okay, you could have lived for 50 years, and they would have had to keep paying that $2,000 out. That was the risk they took.
And that's how you, quote unquote, beat the insurance company.
That's right.
And I talk to clients with this all the time. That's how you win. I'm using win in quotes, right? If you were to get the full amount of your money back, you basically have to live past the projections that insurance company, that actuarial guy behind the scenes, right, is putting together for how long you're going to live, whatever your life expectancy is going to be. And this is where they get really, really good at nailing down, okay, if you live in this zip code and you're already this age, they have a pretty good idea of how much longer you're going to live. And they will pull you in with, let's say, 100 other people. And if they've got 100 other people that look like you, they know that 90 of them are not going to make it to that age.
Right.
So you need to be one of the 10 in order to beat the insurance company. That's how you win. That's how you beat the insurance company. But the insurance company knows it's a casino, right? They're playing the odds. They know that 9 times out of 10, you are not going to live beyond that life expectancy for whatever age you are at whatever part of the country that you live in. And so there's 9 other people that did not live past that age, and they've collected that money, and they've made money off of those clients.
Moral of the story, the insurance companies are exceptionally good at this, and they have a lot of data to work with. It is unlikely that you're going to beat them, so don't put that into your plan.
I always use the example. I'm a recovering insurance company employee, associate, if you will. I know how they work. They make a lot of money. They have really big buildings.
They always have nice buildings.
They have really nice buildings. They own a lot of real estate. You'd be amazed how much some of these insurance companies own. That is not necessarily in the traditional lanes of an insurance company, right? They own a lot of real estate. They own a lot of stuff. These are big, big companies. They know what they're doing. They don't make many mistakes when it comes to this stuff. So there's that.
So let's talk about deferred annuities that have an income rider that's usually based on what they call an income base.
A benefit base.
Or a benefit base, I'm sorry.
Benefit base, income base. I use the term phantom value.
Okay.
Because it doesn't exist.
All right. Walk people through that.
So
Confusing.
what that means is if you have, and you see this a ton with variable annuities,
yes.
mostly variable annuities, and they're not quite as popular as they were, especially pre-08.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't see nearly as many VAs, variable annuities, as we used to. But anyway, basically what they do is, hey, you invest in this variable annuity. The variable annuity goes up and down based on the stock market because you are invested in sub-accounts.
Right.
Basically mutual funds that live inside a variable annuity wrapper.
Okay.
So you're taking all the same risk of the stock market that you would take if you were just invested in a basic brokerage account or an IRA.
But with more limited investment options.
You're going to have more limited investment options, and you're also going to have higher fees associated with those variable annuities as well. The way that they sell you, though, is, hey, we're going to take this income rider or this withdrawal benefit, and we're going to tack it on to your amount. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to have this benefit base that exists kind of on the side, okay? And it only exists on paper. When you get your statement, that's the only place.
That's the first place where people get completely lost in those statements.
Yeah, because what the way that they're sold is, hey, this benefit base is going to go up 7-8%, whatever the number is. Mm-hmm. It's going to go up a guaranteed 7% per year, regardless of market conditions.
Right.
Okay. The benefit base goes up. The actual account value is not guaranteed to go up in any way, shape, or form. It is fully exposed to the stock market or whatever sub accounts that you're invested in.
Right.
But this benefit base only exists on paper because at some point or another, you were going to turn on your income benefit. Usually it's some type of lifetime guaranteed rider, income rider, right? And so whenever you go to turn on that lifetime guaranteed income, they're going to base that lifetime guaranteed income on the value of the benefit base, not on the value of the actual account itself, okay? And because you've been getting a guaranteed roll-up, a guaranteed rate of return on the benefit base, once again, I'm using air quotes here for those listening on podcast because it doesn't exist anywhere except on your statement. Mm-hmm. Okay, it exists on paper. That's the only time that's the only place this benefit base exists. But this phantom benefit base has continued to go up over, let's say, 10 years at a 7-8% clip every single year, regardless of market conditions. All the while, all the fees that are being assessed on that contract are coming out of the account value. So because the fees are coming out of the account value is going to be prohibitively more difficult to grow. Okay. Right?
There's that word again.
Because the fees are assessed on the account value, but they're derived based upon the value of the benefit base. So if you have a benefit base of $200,000 and the actual account value is $150,000, they're assessing the fees based upon the $200,000 benefit base. Let's say it's a 1% fee of $2,000 a year, but that $2,000 a year is going to be assessed on an account value of $150,000. That's more than 1%, right? So that's kind of one way that they get you. So it's prohibitively difficult to grow the account values in a variable annuity contract. But they're not sold because of the account value. They're sold because once you're in and once you see that benefit base continue to go up every year, you're kind of stuck because then they're going to promise, oh, well, now we have a $50,000 difference between the benefit base and the actual account value. You have to turn on the income now because it's going to be based on this higher benefit base, this higher phantom value that once again only exists on paper for the purposes of the actuaries behind the desks of these big insurance companies. But that's the number that they'll use to pay you a guaranteed income stream for however much longer you're going to live. But the reason they do that is because they've been assessing fees, let's say in this case for 10 years.
Right.
Okay, so they've been assessing fees for 10 years at an above market rate. Okay. And so they know the longer that you keep that money deferred, what does that mean? The less amount of time you have to live. Right. So the longer that you don't take that income base, and they make it more and more attractive for you to wait longer and longer until you actually turn on the income riders. That way it also gives you the illusion that this benefit base is continuing to grow even bigger and bigger and bigger. Right. So they want to make it as attractive as possible for you to wait as long as possible to actually turn on the income benefit. Right. And then the longer you wait, let's say you wait till 70, 75, if your life expectancy is 83, well, they know that they only have to pay out for maybe, 8 to 10 years or something like that. So once again, these insurance companies know what they are doing, but this is a very, very inefficient way to generate income.
Yeah.
And in the terms of what we're using today, passive income, because this is how it's sold, right? This is how insurance agents are selling these products. We're going to generate a passive income stream that's never going to outlive you.
And another thing that I've heard on these, and this is where they will really put a bad taste in your mouth, is they are also sold, unlike that SPIA where when you die, it's gone. Once you turn that income on, that's based on the benefit base, but the value of the contract is still there. And when you die, that goes on to your beneficiaries. The problem is that value can go away very, very quickly because you were talking about it. The fees on these can get really high really fast.
Well, so the fees are based upon the benefit base and then assessed on the account value. The income itself, that's the exact same thing. So they're going to, let's say, okay, we're going to turn on a 5% withdrawal rate on the income. Well, 5% of, in this case, I was using $200,000. Okay, they're going to assess that 5% income based on $200,000, but they're going to withdraw it from the actual account value, which is only $150,000.
Right.
So in essence, that withdrawal rate in practice is actually significantly higher than 5%. So it's a 5% withdrawal rate on an account value that doesn't exist except on paper. But functionally, it's being withdrawn against an account value that's not nearly as high as this benefit base.
So the concept that when you pass away, there will still be some money left over that goes on to your beneficiaries is not nearly as attractive in practice as it is in the way that they are described by people who are selling these, correct?
Correct. And once again, yes, there will be a death benefit based upon whatever's still in the actual account itself. But if you want an enhanced death benefit, we're happy to give you one at an additional, 35, 40 basis points.
Oh my gosh.
Which, for those that don't know, let's say 0.35 to 0.4% in fees.
Yeah.
So these things are loaded with fees. These things are loaded with just all kinds of restrictions and things that are really, really hard to assess if you don't know how to look at these products.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to another one. The next one that we've got on our list is a business or a side hustle. And we're hearing this more and more from younger people in particular. I don't understand why people think that a side hustle is passive, but I hear it all the time. The word hustle should be the dead giveaway here, right? You're going to have to go out and work to do this. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. In fact, you know what? My wife has, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many jobs she works. And all but one are side hustles that she does for fun, right? She enjoys it. She makes a little bit of extra money, but she's working for it. It's not passive. So the one that I think that most people think of when they say that a side hustle is passive is, unfortunately, the infamous pyramid scheme.
Oh,
right?
yes.
And for those of you who don't know how these work, I hate to pick on them, but Amway, remember that? And there's been a million other ones like it. The concept here is you go out and you sell whatever the product is, but you don't just sell it. You get other people to sell it for you, right? And then you get a cut of everything that they're doing. Now that becomes passive, right? And then they get more people to do it. And then you get a cut of all those people, and you end up on top of the pyramid. The problem is very few people are successful at this, and the only ones who make really good money are the ones who are at the very top of the pyramid.
In the first place.
Yeah, they were the ones who got in really early, and there's been a million of these over the years. I don't know if you've ever fooled around with any of them. I looked into one 30 years ago, and I realized within about 30 days, I don't want to do this. This is a waste of my time.
I got suckered into a job interview like right out of college.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember what it was for, but I remember going into the interview and thinking it was just me. Like I'm going, hey, I've got my tie on, I got my suit and tie on, I'm going into a professional interview, and I walk in the door and there's all kinds of people in the waiting room, and I'm like, this is odd. And then you walk in, and it's like basically a group presentation where they're trying to sell all of these young, gullible people right out of college to, hey, go sell. I think it was like a water filter system or something just absurd. Like, really,
there's nothing passive about selling water filters.
Yeah, like I'm not going to make my career just selling water filters right out of college, clearly. But they, and I think they targeted me. And but what they do is they'll have people that are very clear. It was so poorly done. But they had people that were in the audience acting like interested.
Oh, well done. It's like a magician show.
Oh, right? and I could see I saw that thing coming from a mile away. It was so bad. So I very clearly remember telling someone, because I stood up and someone asked, "Hey, where are you going, man? The presentation's not done." And I said, I just need to go to the bathroom real quick. For me. I need to go to the bathroom real quick, and I ran to my car as fast as I could possibly. I got out of there.
Laid rubber on the parking lot.
Oh, it was so bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So side hustles. I'm a big fan, especially for those of us who understand that the human psyche needs to be productive. And that's where retirement can really kind of suck some of the energy out of people, because just sitting around and doing nothing, that doesn't work for most people. So having some kind of a side hustle in that aspect, that's fine. You're enjoying what you do, right? But doing it as a form of passive income, that just...
Well, it's interesting.
It's just not realistic.
Well, it's language, right?
Yes, absolutely.
It's language, because whenever you hear the term side hustle, what do you think? It's like, oh, you have this thing on the side that, like, it's like almost this mysterious thing that only you know about, and it sounds a lot better than saying I have a second job,
right?
Right. But in reality, that's all that it is.
Yes.
It's a second job. It's not passive.
Keyword there, job.
It's a job.
You're doing
you have a second job. It's fine. Go if you need a second income, go get a second job. I'm all for it. But you don't have a side hustle.
Right.
You don't have something that nobody else knows about. You just got a second job. Embrace it.
Yep.
But it's not passive. It's not passive. But a lot of times it's sold that way. You can generate passive income after you sell so many, and this is going back to the pyramid scheme that you were just alluding to, right? It's not passive at first, but once you build it, then it becomes less. Then it becomes more passive. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a passive income stream.
Yeah,
exactly. You built that.
Yep. You worked hard for it if you were successful at it. And then there's some other things that you hear as side hustle, but it kind of goes back to things that we talked about in the last episode. So, for example, flipping real estate. Right? That's my side hustle. There's nothing passive about flipping real estate.
It's a second job.
Yeah, it is very much a second job, and you're working crazy hours, or you're spending all of your potential profits hiring somebody else to do the work. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not passive. There's a major sacrifice of either time or energy or money to make those things happen. So it's not passive. You're still working for it. So, all right, I think we beat that one to death. We don't need to go on too much on that one. I think we got one more on our list.
What do we have? We have CDs.
Fixed income alternatives
Fixed
is
income.
The title.
Yep.
So CDs, CD-like things. So you want to tackle that one, or you want me to go into it?
Well, I think if you're talking about the actual definition of passive income, this is probably the best example of it, of actual passive income. But this goes back to the point that I was making at the very beginning of last week's episode and the beginning of this week's episode. The more passive an income stream is, the less fruitful it will be.
Yeah. Because
income requires time, effort.
Yep.
Okay. CDs, money market accounts, fixed income alternatives, those are passive income streams. Yeah. You're not doing anything. You're putting money in, obviously capital that you've already earned at some way, shape, or form, but you're putting your money to work and you're generating an income stream. It's not going to be a very big income stream. Mm-hmm. Maybe, knock on wood, it keeps up with inflation. Although the Fed keeps lowering rates, inflation is going to go back up again. So who knows what's going to happen with inflation over the next couple of years. CDs and money market rates are becoming less attractive as they continue to lower rates. So it is a passive income stream for sure, but it's not a very attractive one.
Yeah. I would say in the case of CDs, and also we've got in here high yield savings account, of the same problem.
They're all the same.
The CD is illiquid, whereas the high yield savings account is liquid. But the biggest problem to me, and these are typically FDIC insured, so that's a pro, but the rates that you look at don't keep up with inflation. So it's better than literally having dollar bills under the mattress, because those are losing value.
It's better than your checking account.
Right. Yes, and it's better than your checking account. If you don't have a use for that money in the immediate future, get it out of your checking and put it into a high yield savings or something like that. But they don't keep up with inflation. If inflation is 3%, for example, you're not going to go out and find a 4 or a 5 or a 6% CD. It's not going to happen. You might find a 1.5 or maybe a 2.25, but it's going to be below that rate. Otherwise, the bank's going to lose money. And banks are just like insurance companies. They are not out there for the purpose of losing money. That's just not how it works. There is an alternative that we have been known to use from time to time to CDs, but it's a very specific tool that you use in a very specific type of thing. It's not an overall income strategy, and that would be multi-year guaranteed annuities. Kind of works the same way, but it's the insurance company. Mm-hmm. But you're getting a fixed rate. That fixed rate is still typically not going to keep up with income.
They're fancy CDs.
Yeah, they are. But the same problem exists. Your money is illiquid. You get a certain rate of return. It is a guaranteed rate of return, so you know exactly how much your money is going to be in a certain window. That's fine when you need to protect money for a very, very short window of time, right? And then you're going to turn right around and use it. But using it as an income stream, if I'm going to buy this CD so that it's going to become income next year, that very, very inefficient ways of doing it.
So, any other thoughts?
No, I think we've beaten this one to death.
I think more than anything, the reason we did this series was because we just get so many questions about passive income, and we get so many questions about income in general, and how are my investments going to generate income? Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you tell them, well, we're going to sell some of your gains, that doesn't compute for a lot of people, even though in most cases we're going to be selling gains at a much lower tax rate than if we were devising some type of a dividend income paying portfolio or fixed income type of a portfolio. And so it's important to understand, we're not saying dividend paying stocks are bad. They're great. They're fantastic.
Everything we've discussed has a place.
But it's a matter of finding a solution that's not all or nothing, right? Because so many times we'll talk to folks, well, I've got a dividend paying portfolio. Well, do you have anything else that's different than a dividend-paying portfolio?
Right.
Because that's kind of equivalent to having all of your eggs in one basket, all your eggs in one specific strategy. Mm-hmm. There's not really much diversification there, and we talk a lot about diversification. Same thing on the fixed income side. Using bonds or bonds alternatives, yet safe. And I've had plenty of clients come in with, nothing but bonds and bonds alternatives or CDs or, high-yield savings accounts. Mm-hmm. Well, it's generating 4%. Have you seen the inflation rate lately? Right. You're not really making money. By the way, have you seen the stock market, right? So some type of blend between strategies is really going to be a far more effective approach in trying to craft an income strategy for you in retirement, as opposed to just putting your money in the bank and making money off of CDs.
Yeah. I think that the example, or the analogy that we use a lot is, if you've only got one tool, and that tool, for example, is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Right? But if you're going to build something, and we're getting ready to do a deck on my house, so that's the analogy that pops in. You're going to use a hammer for the nails, and you're going to use a screwdriver or maybe a drill for the screws, and you're going to use a square to get things even. There's lots of tools involved in order to complete a project, and this is no different. When you have one of these tools, and that's the only thing that you use, there's always some kind of danger to it. There's always a sacrifice that's not necessary. It's a combination of these tools along with the growth type things that you were talking about is almost always your best option.
Language is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I was just alluding to, language is important. Words have meaning, and words have specific connotations. And so when you hear the term passive income, you typically are thinking something that's going to have less risk.
Yeah.
Something that's not going to be nearly as correlated to the stock market, right? Something that's going to have less risk, but I still have all this income coming in without any risk. You're still taking a risk.
Yep.
And we talk about risk so much because that's really what's most important, is defining risk based upon when you need access to a dollar within your portfolio.
Yep.
Okay? And if you're not taking much stock market risk, trust me, you're still taking a lot of risk there. Because you don't have any stock market risk, you don't have anything to provide long-term growth within your portfolio. Yeah. You're also taking tax risk because all of your investments are producing ordinary income that are going to be 100% taxable as ordinary income, right? You don't have any long-term capital gains exposure within your portfolio, or maybe you don't have anything that's going to be tax deferred or tax free, right? Yep. So risk it's so weird the way people assess risk and the way they think about risk, because they only think about one specific type of risk.
Oh, you took the words out of my mouth there.
And they're only thinking about one specific type of risk. And in order to avoid that type of risk, they're taking a
different type of risk.
Because they're taking a totally different type of risk, all in the name of trying to find these miraculous investments that are going to generate all of this passive income that's going to provide everything I need to live the retirement of my dreams.
Yeah. And let's remember the old phrase when we talk about passive being that free source of income. Nothing is free. Mm-hmm. You gave something up. You sacrificed something. You took a risk somewhere that you may not have even been aware of. There's nothing that's free, so you need to keep that in mind when you hear that word passive. And like you said, language matters.
So, what's up, bourbon?
Well, let's talk rye.
Let's talk rye.
So, what's your opinion?
I'm not going to give it an A.
Okay, fair enough.
Probably not going to give it a B.
We're going downhill.
It's really hot.
Yes, and I will tell you, in the group that everybody was raving about it, most of those guys like higher proof drinks in the first place, and they've already had one or two tastes of something else to kind of warm the palate up.
I'm not opposed to higher proof. I can, but I definitely put a few hairs on my chest having this drink. It didn't. The level of heat was not balanced out by the level of flavor that I had. I don't think it was worth it. And once again, I'm not a big rye guy. Mm-hmm. I just feel it's harsher. I don't really feel it's nearly as pleasant as most traditional types of bourbons, I guess. So it's not that I hated it, but I would never buy it. It was infinitely better after I put a couple drops of water in it, and I watered it down a tad because this was 125. So I mean, it's hot.
Yeah.
So when I watered it down just a tad, the taste and the flavor was significantly better. Mm-hmm. I will say that.
Okay. I like the high proof stuff. Now, if you have something that's a lower proof and you kind of taste that first and it warms the mouth up, it prepares the palate for the higher proof, then it's a little bit easier. When you go to a bourbon tasting event, and there's a lot of stuff out there, the guys who know what they're doing, they will always start with low proof stuff because they don't want to, and what they call is burning their palate.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I drink something that's 125 proof, and remember, we're talking about very small samples.
Oh, I would chug an 80 proof right now.
Yeah. And then they go back and they taste something that's 80 or 90 proof. It doesn't have any kick to it at all because, like you just said, you could chug that because you're desensitized at that point. That being said, and I'm not a big rye person. I like some of them. I told you I do not care for the regular Sazerac rye. I love this.
I like it better than the regular. I will say that.
And you're going to make fun of me. Before I put a few drops of water in it, what I tasted was a spicy butterscotch. Remember those butterscotch candies?
Yeah, I didn't taste that, no.
But imagine if you dipped it in like hot sauce. Right? It was that, and that's the rye. That's not the high proof. It's probably a little bit of the proof. When I watered it down a little bit, now's when you're going to make fun of me. There was a sweetness that came out. It did cut it back a little bit, but not much. It's still pretty spicy, and I almost tasted dates.
Okay,
right, which
that's
is
very specific.
Yeah, but that was like, wow, what is that flavor? And it took me a minute. I even lost track of what you were saying at one point. I'm talking about what is that I'm tasting?
It wasn't that important,
and it tasted like a date that is spicy.
Yeah.
But the spicy note, and I don't mean hot, I mean flavorful spicy. There's a lot of it in there. Yeah. So if you prefer something that's a little bit more mild, this ain't for you. But if you like,
I don't want to say heat. I don't want to say mild. I don't like the flavor of rye.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of 120, 125 bourbons on here, right? It's not the mildness that I need. I just don't find the flavor very good.
I will tell you that in certain cocktails, this would be off the scale.
This would be much better in a cocktail.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have not tried this one in a cocktail. Traditionally, an old fashioned is actually supposed to be made with rye, not bourbon, and that's to bring out that spicy note. I may have to try this in an old fashioned or something just to see. I don't think it would be that good in a Manhattan. Okay, I'm going off the rails a little bit on that stuff, but
you're getting into the weeds.
I would like to try this in an old fashioned, and I'll report back and tell you what I think.
All right.
So, but that's all we've got for the Sazerac Rye Foolproof.
Good deal. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Retirement Planning Happy Hour. Come back next week where, who knows, we'll figure out before we record what we're talking about next week, right? But thanks for joining us today. If you appreciate or like anything that you hear today, please feel free to give us a call. Go to the show notes and schedule a call directly with us at our website. Send us a message in the show notes. We would love to hear back from you, any feedback, or if you'd love to get in touch with us, give us a call. And we will walk through some ways that we can generate income within your portfolio without sacrificing too much risk, right? So thanks for joining us. Until next time.